Oh, hello, everybody. Here we are. Now, I'm just now getting ready. Are you guys ready for this? I'm getting to talk with Mayor Pete. I'm so excited. Let me pull up my notes here. Just waiting for him to call in. This is always that awkward time before a live where everybody's like, just waiting for Mayor Pete to hit me up. You guys, I think this is about to be the most political thing I've ever done. I've got Miley Cyrus song in my head. I've been oh no, loved by you. I have been mine. I don't know the words. Hi, Emma. Hi, Tyra. Pete Buttigieg, we're waiting for you. We're so excited. All 3,600 of us. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, maybe I'll play a song until I see his video request. Sorry, this is quite dull. I apologize, you guys. I'm in London, you guys, so a little George Michael is appropriate, right? Pete, where are you at? Oh, 74 others. Maybe it's coming in these. Oh, now I see. Wow. Okay. Wait, maybe this isn't the official account. I'm gonna feel like an idiot. Is this the official account?
There you are. Hey.
Hi! Oh, I'm so sorry. I clearly don't know how to use Instagram still.
No worries. It's always the worst that minute where you're trying to find the guest and keep everybody together. Did you say you're in London?
I am in London, yeah. Where are you?
How was it out there? Right home in South Bend.
Nice, right on.
I like to think of this as the London of the St. Joseph Valley in northern Indiana here.
Absolutely. Do you know that I was born in Indiana?
Oh, wow, I forgot that.
Yeah.
Indianapolis, right? Yeah, January 1982.
I don't know much about Indiana. I was there for a year of my life, so.
And we're still going to claim you. We claim Lincoln's boyhood home, even though he was neither born here nor did he spend his adulthood here. We got a little piece of Lincoln's youth. We got enough to make a claim on Adam Lambert. So you're a Hoosier, whether you want to be or not.
I'm into it. I'm into it. So what have you been up to? Keeping busy?
Yeah, I'm amazed by how busy we can get without leaving the four walls at home some days. So
Yeah,
a lot of Zooming, and I'm teaching up the road at Notre Dame, doing everything I can, obviously,
amazing.
to get Joe Biden elected. And
Oh, same.
yeah, this is the home stretch, obviously. So I think we're all finding our ways to contribute. But thanks for doing this. It means a lot to have your voice out there. And since you are in London, it's worth mentioning that there's a lot of Democrats abroad and a lot of Americans abroad who need to know how to vote by mail if you haven't done it before. You go to votefromabroad.org and get info on how to do it, depending on your state. But we need every last vote this time, so it's going to be important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's obviously the main reason why I'm here today, and to meet you, of course. I have to say, seeing your campaign, it was such a success, and seeing a gay man run for president, I mean, that's a first for all of us in the community. And I was so inspired. And I love how you carry yourself and how we got to meet your husband. And it's been a very inspiring thing to watch. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And, I know that I'm standing on the shoulders of people who came before us. And you're a part of that as a real trailblazer. I think it's easy now to forget how much has changed. We have a long way to go, but to just think how much has changed since 2009 or 2011 when I was first elected. We know we've got a long way to go, but thanks for just letting a lot of people see what's possible in their lives. Cause I know that's been huge for so many.
Ah, thanks. Shucks. Well, should we dive into some of these, I have some questions here that we've written down.
Great.
I'm so excited to pick your brain about this stuff because I feel like, as somebody that's always been very concerned about society and social issues and equal rights, I haven't necessarily always been the most political person. And I found myself over the past 5 years or so becoming more and more interested in what was going on and trying to learn. So let's educate them.
Good. And that's the important thing. This isn't just for, political junkies or people who spend all day reading the news. So we've all got something on the line right now. So I think you can lead a lot of people through that same journey that you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like a very, very important year. Well, let me while we're on that topic, obviously we all have personal issues invested that are wrapped up into this election. Which issues do you find that address you personally?
Well, there's so many. All politics is personal, right? And certainly in the LGBTQ community, I mean, our rights are on the ballot, right? You think about, somebody whose marriage exists thanks to a margin of one vote on the U.S. Supreme Court. The next president's going to be making lifetime appointments to the court. I'm thinking about healthcare. We've been, matter of fact, the ACA is how we've got healthcare this year. And, my mother-in-law, if she has pre-existing conditions, if something were to happen to the Affordable Care Act, which the Trump administration right now is in court trying to get rid of, if they get their way, I don't know how she would be able to get health care. I mean, these are incredibly personal and immediate issues for us. And then you add to that everything that's going on with the pandemic, the fact that we now know the president knew how bad it was and told Americans something different. And that's one of the reasons why we're falling behind the rest of the developed world. We got the worst death levels in the developed world.
Yeah.
This is as life or death as it gets. And it is personal.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm just looking at my notes here to make sure that we're not repeating ourselves. Yeah, I wanted to ask you your thoughts about the rollbacks on some of the trans rights that we have in this country, especially in the military. I know that was a big one that came up. I mean, the fact that I've always felt like a trans person that wants to serve in the military, that takes a lot of courage. And obviously it's not it's not an environment that you would think automatically would be the most conducive environment for somebody like that. And anybody that's serving in the armed forces that takes that risk to honor our country should be congratulated and supported. I mean, what are your thoughts behind this whole situation?
Absolutely. I mean, this is one more attack on trans Americans' ability to live a life of their choosing and to contribute. I mean, we're talking about people who aren't asking what the country can do for them, right? They're asking what they can do for the country. And I'll tell you, having been in the military, I mean, if I was getting in a vehicle in Afghanistan to go outside the wire, and I was picking the person who's going to sit next to me in the front seat and watch out for threats, I care less if they're trans or gay or straight, or for that matter, Republican or Democrat, or where they were from. I want to know that they got through their training and that they were alert, and that I could trust them. And those are the things that matter in military service. So this president attacking people who have been through, been through every step of demonstrating that they can do a good job serving this country, just like the attacks on trans healthcare, attacks in the education system. I mean, really, basically trying to define trans Americans out of existence. And that's why it's so important. Look, as a cis gay man, these are issues that I've learned about through dialogue and conversation, and understanding just how big our LGBTQ community is and the different experiences, especially what Black trans women are up against right now.
Yeah.
And we've got to be there for each other. Because if you look in our history, Black trans women 50 years ago helped make things possible for gay white men today. And it's a great example of what can happen when people stand up for each other. Now's the time to push back. And you know what? Most Americans get it. Here in Indiana, the clock might not be moving forward in the same way it has in other parts of the country, but most people just want to make sure that they're going to be okay, and that the people they love are going to be okay. And these attacks, I think, are just designed to drive wedges between Americans, when we need to move toward a more compassionate world where everybody can live and live well without being attacked by their own president.
Yeah, it's strange days, absolutely. 100%. I agree with what you said. And you're coming from, you have a military background, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so,
so you've been inside of it,
and I'll tell you what's not good for the military, right, is for service members to be wondering if their career is on the line every day. Like we ask them to take on enough stress in the before even if you're not deployed into a war zone, the moves that you got to do, the sacrifices you got to make, and to add that pressure, to add that weight for people just out there to do a good job, it's bad for the country, as well as obviously just profoundly unfair. So thanks for raising that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like there's that the LGBTQ community as a whole, where do you feel like we're at in terms of voter turnout? Do you feel like we understand exactly what's at stake? I mean, you were kind of addressing that a moment ago, but where do you see some areas that we could improve upon as far as getting involved and voting?
Yeah.
Besides,
Let
actually,
me say this: if every LGBTQ voter votes and every pro-equality voter votes, that is an unstoppable force. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing people need to think about is the power that's in their hands. Look, I'm having one kind of conversation with a lot of folks who maybe used to vote Republican, but they're ready to change their mind because they're just horrified by this president. But I know there's a lot of others who are deciding whether to vote, and that's who I really want to connect with the message that this is your moment of maximum power. And again, if you're part of this community, first of all, people gave up so much so that we could have the rights that we have, just to have a shot at equality. And we know we're not there yet. There's still this attack on trans service members and other trans Americans. There's still conversion therapy going on in a lot of parts of the country. Healthcare, adoption rights, international issues where the U.S. could be. I mean, you're abroad right now, and as you know, different countries are at very different levels in terms of equality for the LGBTQ community. And America ought to be leading our allies in making sure we stand up for those rights. That's obviously not going to happen in this administration. So that's part of why it's so important. And it might come down to a handful of votes in a handful of states. I mean, that's what happened last time.
Yeah, it was so close.
Per precinct. So everybody, if you're ever wondering whether it makes a difference, I mean, and people are turned off, right, by all that's wrong with our politics. I get it, I lived it, but this is your moment of maximum power to actually do something about it. It starts with the election.
Yeah, and what I love about the Biden campaign with Biden and Harris is that, you know, I feel like they're willing to listen. It feels like a team that wants to learn, that wants to try to help the country. It's so obvious to me, and it's probably obvious to you too, and so many of us. And I think maybe if we hold each other accountable a little bit more
Yeah.
and make sure that all your friends vote and
Yeah.
have a voting party and a socially distanced one, and it's time for us to all do what we can to increase our numbers. I think
Absolutely.
it's such a weird year.
Absolutely. No, I mean,
Yeah.
this is, the way I'm thinking about it, look, this year got off to a terrible start. I mean, this year started with the impeachment of the president and him getting off, and we can't even remember that. I mean, that was, it feels like ages ago, right?
Yeah.
We've had the pandemic. We've had rightfully, I think, an uprising of anguish over racial injustice in this country. We're having an economic crisis. We have a climate crisis. California, if you've seen the photos coming out of California, Oregon, I mean, it looks like from another planet. It's shocking.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So 2020 is not gotten off to a great
No.
first half or so. But we get to decide how 2020 ends. And I think 2020 could actually go down in history as the beginning of a different kind of decade, that the 2020s would be remembered as the decade when frankly, when America got its shit together and started moving forward in a way that we just haven't been able to do, because there's already an American majority that believes in equality, that believes in justice, that believes in doing something about climate. So I actually think it's hard to think of the word 2020 and the word pride in the same sense. I actually think we could be proud of our country in 2020.
Yeah.
If we get it right on election day.
Yeah. So in essence, casting a vote this year is an act of hope. I mean,
Exactly.
And I also feel like there's so many of us that have come together because of the events of this year. I feel like it is, as horrible as some of those events have been, the response has really created this sense of unity. I mean, we haven't even touched on it yet, but the Black Lives Matter movement has just been gaining so much momentum, obviously, with everything that's going on this year, and it is very humbling and educational to be a part of it, to watch this all go down, to listen to our friends, to listen to our brothers and sisters of color, and take a backseat for a minute as white people, even though we're gay. It's time for us to understand and listen. And
that's right.
I went to one of the marches in Hollywood, and the cross section of people that were there blew my mind. These are people that probably wouldn't usually be in the same event, but coming together for the right reasons. I'm really hopeful that energy carries into voting.
Yeah, and that's what our future could look like. Picture that coalition guiding our country forward. And you're right, we can't just, we have as a society, I think, failed to listen to the lived experience of Black Americans who've been saying this the whole time. But it also shouldn't be only on their shoulders. They should, of course, be leading the way. But it's up to the rest of us to make sure we're doing the work. And I think, one thing that can give us a lot of hope is the way this moment is leading to that, or could be leading.
Yeah, 100%. And it's exciting. It's an exciting ticket too for the representation. I mean, it's
historic. I mean, there's never been a ticket like this. And I'll tell you, having competed with Joe Biden and with Kamala Harris, I can tell you, they're a fantastic team. And the mix of capacity and compassion, like just people who care about this should be basic, right? You should always assume that your president, even if you don't agree with them, is a compassionate person. But since we can't count on that, it's worth saying that, like, that means something that we could have that back in the White House.
Absolutely. As far as voting goes, knowing that we're in a pandemic right now, we know that there's some obstacles to actually getting out on election day or around election day to vote. Can you suggest some strategies in order to make sure that your vote is heard? I know we were talking about if you're abroad, you mentioned the way to do that. I personally have I've requested my mail-in ballot. That's how I'm going to vote. But maybe you could enlighten people with some options there and some details.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to have a plan and to think about it now, because early vote is going to be huge this year, and it's to get ahead of any lines that may be forming. Also the importance of vote by mail. Now, for better or for worse, our country has a different vote by mail system in every different state and territory. There's 57 different ways that it works, depends just how things work in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important to learn how your state works, to confirm that you're registered to vote, and then to learn about whether you can vote by mail. If you're eligible to, I definitely recommend it. It's safe, it's simple, it's how Chasten and I voted in the primaries this year. By the way, it's also how the president voted. So even though he's claiming that there's something wrong with it, I mean, do as I say, not as I do, right?
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
So now it's not available to everybody. There's some places where, unless you have a certain reason, you have to vote in person. If you're in that kind of state, it looks like Indiana, my home state, is going to be an example of that. It's still wise to vote early if you can. Just get it out of the way.
Right.
But again, the most important thing is to make sure you're registered, make a plan, and know your rights. Because sometimes people are getting to the polls and they're saying, oh, well, your name doesn't match the sheet or something like that. That's where I'd recommend looking at organizations like Fair Fight. That's the organization that Stacey Abrams created after the election in Georgia, where there was a lot of voter suppression. And they're going through state by state, making sure that there's a hotline available, that people know, how to make sure if they're having some issue at the polls, that gets addressed. Last thing I want to mention: think about being a poll worker. Not a lot of people in our generation do that. We think of this as something retirees do, right?
Right.
But actually, working at the polls is one of the most important things to make sure that the polls operate well. And because it's largely retirees, with the pandemic, there's going to be fewer people available to do it than usual, because it may not be safe for everybody to be out doing that. And so, it's kind of like jury duty. It's this kind of unsexy public service, but it's something that I hope, if you are involved and you're asking, like, what can I do to make sure everybody gets a chance to vote? Something as simple as that. Check in with your county, ask how to train and volunteer to be a poll worker. They actually pay you a little bit, not a lot, but like jury duty, they'll often compensate you for it. And it's a great way to just do something for your community and for your democracy.
Yeah, and I think there's all this conversation about voting during the pandemic, and obviously that's why mail-in voting is going to be so popular this year. But I can't help but kind of roll my eyes and be like, well, you're going to the grocery store with your mask on. Can't you go vote with your mask on? I mean, like, I don't know. It feels like we've figured out how to function in all these other sort of daily tasks. So I don't know why that's such a big
and it's important.
Point.
It's as important as anything you're going to do this year.
And
so but that's the biggest thing. Make a plan and be ready for anything.
Yeah. Obviously, we know that the current administration is creating a very dangerous sense of division in our country. I know I feel it. One of the things that's so hard is, I'm assuming we're both Democrat, and I'm sure we both know people that are identifying as Republican. And sure. In our world right now, identity is such a huge factor in everything we do. It's a big thing with the court of public opinion. It's big in online. There are so many ways in which now there's been this dividing line between Democrat and Republican, where we're sort of being provoked to become enemies of each other, which I just think is so dangerous. How do you think that the Biden and Harris administration will help create a feeling of unity and belonging after the election? I mean, where do you think they need to start to try to heal that divide?
Well, I think you hit on it, especially with that word belonging. I think that's the most important thing, is for everyone to feel like we belong in the same country. It's not that we have to agree all the time, but we need to at least have a level of respect for each other's role and rights and belonging as neighbors, as fellow citizens. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris ticket. From day one, Joe's talked about the soul of the nation being what's really on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And I think he's somebody whose instinct is always to try to bring people together. His first instinct when we're divided is going to be, how do we heal? And that's really important in a president, because there are moments that transcend party, they transcend ideology and old fights and old battles, and it's just about bringing people together. And we're gonna need to come together to fight this pandemic. We're gonna need to fight to come together to deliver racial justice and equality. By the way, we're also gonna need to come together to deal with something like climate change, which is upon us now. And so, we'll always have a bit of a tug of war over exactly what the right policy is, and that's what the legislative process is about. But for all of that to work, it's got to happen in a bigger atmosphere that I think the president is the only person who can set the tone for. Just calling everybody to our highest values, and you'll be amazed. I mean, I even saw it at the local level, serving as mayor, how when you successfully set that tone, some of those party lines can fade away a little bit, and we can work together on a problem that we care about. And we've got to find a way to do that. And we can do it without watering down any of our values, anything we believe in. But we can do it in a way that calls out to people who maybe haven't always been on our side of the aisle. Yeah,
I 100% agree. And I feel like it is even as simple as just the energy that's being sort of rippled across our country right now. It's almost subliminal. It's just so much negativity. So I'm excited because I do feel the same way about the Biden-Harris ticket. I feel like there's a positive energy there. There's that the desire to make people feel better about the country they're living in, which is just such a wonderful, uplifting message. I'm really grateful for that. I'm also really hoping that the Biden-Harris ticket help repair some of the bridges that have been burned internationally. It feels like there's so much strange energy in between the U.S. and so many other countries around the world right now. So,
absolutely. I mean, just restoring the credibility of this country is going to matter so much. Like we just had a conversation online, if folks are interested, with the National Security Action Forum earlier today, and a number of us were talking about what it'll take to do that. I think, the world's going to need American leadership in order to solve problems like climate, in order to solve problems like the pandemic. I don't know if you saw this. They're estimating that we're going to need 8,000 cargo planes just to deliver the vaccine. It's an example of the sort of thing, once we have the vaccine. It's an example of the kind of global coordination that's going to be needed to save lives. America's uniquely played a role in doing that. We've got to be ready to do that again, but it only works if we got our own house in order here at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you might have. I have one more question. I think you might have touched on this already, but I know a lot of young people may feel sort of like their vote doesn't matter. You did mention something along these lines before, but speaking directly to them, what would you say to anybody that feels that way? I mean, I know when I was younger, I felt that way. I've obviously been converted because I realize the importance now. But how do you convince somebody?
I think the most important thing for young people to hear is the longer you're planning to be here, the more you have at stake in a bunch of decisions that are about to be made. I mean, the decisions that are going to be made in the White House in the next year or 2 years are going to decide the future of our climate, our economy, our society, our standing in the world, our rights. I mean, it's all on the line. And if you're marching in the streets, that's great. If you're tweeting, good. If you're spreading the word in any way you can, fantastic. But your moment of maximum power as an individual American citizen is the moment of the election. It's the moment that you fill out that ballot because the country has to take your input. People can notice or ignore whatever you say on social media, but when you vote, it is recorded and it goes into the hiring or the firing of the most powerful person in the world. People need to understand that power in their hands. And by the way, the most important changes that have happened from the American Revolution itself to the Civil Rights Movement to everything happening now with the March for Our Lives and the movement for Black Lives and climate activism, the greatest energy in that is actually coming from young people. That's always how change has worked most effectively in this world and in this country. So we can't let this moment pass us by.
Absolutely. 100%. Well said. Yeah. It's time. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned tweeting and comments on Instagram, and that's all great. Everyone has these passionate opinions. So now put it into your vote. I mean, put it into something concrete. I agree with what you're saying. That's 100% true. There's a couple other questions that we have here, if we have time. Do we have time?
I think we got a couple more minutes. So let's jump in.
these are kind of, these are some a little less political, but I was just wondering, what was your biggest life lesson so far in 2020?
I mean, the biggest thing I've learned while I was running for president is that, we are experiencing the same humanity, even if we're experiencing different challenges and obstacles and different lives. That everywhere I went, and places radically different from each other, from Las Vegas to Marshall County, Iowa. But people were worried about the same things. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be healthy? They're worried about mental health. They're worried about having a job. They're worried about their kids or their neighbors. And they're worried about their rights and freedoms. And that's something that binds us together. We got this incredibly diverse country, and that's part of our strength. But I think seeing it in action was just one of the most powerful things about running. How about you? What's the biggest thing you've taken away from living in 2020 so far?
Drink water. I think just like everybody, I think the realities of the pandemic have been really intense. I think all the things that we've all had to learn, I think we've all learned some of the same things, dealing with isolation and lockdown, having to sort of retrain your habits to stay safe and to keep everybody else safe. Yeah. Sort of being humble enough to, wear that mask when you go outside, to protect the community. I think it's been a big reminder of, and also a reveal of the fact that we might have some selfishness to deal with. A lot of people worry about themselves only. I'm not going to get sick. And I think the pandemic has sort of brought to light the fact that we are living in a community, and that we, are susceptible to something that ravages a community. So in that light, I think we have to take care of each other, and look out for each other. I think it's a big reminder of, to not be so selfish.
Yeah, it's true. We're seeing how much we depend on each other, and everything's connected. Everyone's connected. And this, it's a cruel way to be reminded of it, but maybe it'll do us some good to have been shown that in such a blunt way that maybe it'll change how we approach life.
I hope so. I really do. I think it's a consciousness shift.
There you go.
Big time. Yeah. Also, I what else do I have here? Some good ones. What's the one thing that you're looking forward to after COVID-19, after it's all over?
I think
Is there a list?
We're all ready to have our lives back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just the little things. Chasten, my husband, and I love to just walk downtown and go into a restaurant and grab a burger, or just hang out with people and run into people, and just that basic human contact. We got a single A minor league baseball team here, South Bend Cubs, just to be walking around there and around people. Notre Dame football, things that involve gathering people together.
Yeah.
I miss all of that. I miss being, my church. I mean, just the things that bring you into contact with other human. Concerts, my God, it's going to be amazing. But that's the only way to get through. So we've got to do the work to get ready for that.
Yeah, exactly. Like let's get it done. Absolutely. I think that's the thing I miss the most too is concerts. It's that's my thing, and I know all of my friends that are in the industry that are performers, whether they're actors or dancers or musicians, we're all a little bit like that's actually one of the things that I was reading about the other day, is that the entertainment, arts and culture make up such a giant source of revenue for our country, and so many people that are employed by that industry are out of work right now. So I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us where we can't wait to get back to work.
That's right. Yeah. Well, here's making sure that happens sooner rather than later. And, I think it starts with the right leadership. So thanks again for being so involved in this. And let's,
my pleasure.
Let's make
Thank you.
Nobody misses the message about how much of a difference we can make right now. Because if not now, then when?
This is the year. All right. Well, thank you. It was so good to meet you and to chat with you. Thank you so much. And thanks for being such an inspiration.
Well, right back at you. Really
thank you.
Proud of everything. Indiana's going to claim pride in you, even if
Hoosier.
Even if it's been a while since you lived here. So take care, stay well, be safe, and look forward to seeing you in person one day.
Likewise. Thank you so much.